Muslim group, and the Whatsoever Community Center and Kansas City Academy. So next we have a guest speaker here, Nicole Esquibel, and she is a professor at Avila University, and she's going to be providing some comments on the youth videos that we saw, and just her perspective as a filmmaker. So I'm going to read a little bio about her. Nicole Esquibel is an award-winning video and filmmaker, writer, and poet. She is a graduate of the prestigious University of Iowa, MFLA Film and Video Production Group. Ms. Esquibel's film and videos have screened both domestically and internationally, including the Between the Lines Award at the Ann Arbor Film Festival. Hush, the first film created under her production company Flying Dragons Films, received tremendous critical acclaim. The project was a closing night selection for the Kansas City International Film Festival and screened at the Hot Springs International Documentary Film Festival. So it's a little bit about her background. So Nicole, thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. I mentioned to Ira and Austin before the screening that there's no better place to be on a rainy Saturday day than a movie theater. So thank you all for coming out. And before I get to my talk here, and pardon the fact that it's on such a small screen, you guys won't mind too much, but my eyes are going to be bothered by this a little bit. But I think it reflects some of the things that we're talking about here with the issues about where money is appropriated and put forth towards. When I came in, I had my tablet. I'm fortunate enough to have a tablet that had all my notes on it in big, bright, bold letters. And I walk in here, and there's no Wi-Fi internet access. And I was kind of appalled. I mean, I was sort of like, wait a second, I cannot access my documents here. And yet, I've done enough traveling throughout developing worlds and third world populations to know that most people don't have internet access at the ready. And that happens here within Kansas City as well. But yet I get into my prestigious bubble of a university and I think that the entire world has internet access all the time. When in fact, only about 2% of the population, the world's population, has daily access to the internet. And that digital divide is one of the things that I think that puts us behind the eight ball in certain areas of Kansas City. So first of all, I would like to thank IHTD for the opportunity to come out here today, and Austin Hoffman in particular for the invitation to come to speak to you today. First of all, congratulations to all the filmmakers. I don't know how many of you out there, we saw your name up there on lights, are here today. Could you raise your hands? None of the filmmakers are here today? Well, congratulations to them for creating works of art that inspire, persuade, and most importantly, I think, critically allow us to analyze the issues that affect the community, both locally and globally. Each of us as artists, I think, have a responsibility to reflect and call attention to the challenges of what the greater society must face. And I think the videos today, we saw that and it reflected it nicely. As artists, we are all mirrors that must be held up to the larger world. And I think it's through the arts that many of us have found a voice to contribute to the change that we would like to see in the world. At the end of World War II, filmmakers were called upon to gather in Nuremberg, Germany in 1946 at some of the trials for the remaining members of the Nazi parties. The films that they used to document the atrocities that took place during World War II were used as evidence. The films primarily reflected the horrors that took place in the concentration camps at Auschwitz and Dachau. The prosecutors of these criminals found it hard to believe that the testimony that the people were giving at this trial was actually true. And so they brought in these films as evidence that what was taking place, the genocide that was taking place at the concentration camps, actually occurred. And that was the first time in which film was really used as a concrete example for social change. And it was that evidence that, in many cases, convicted a lot of some of the most despicable criminals of the 20th century. And so I think that today the use of the camera and the role of the documentarian is as important to record social movements and social injustice as it was in 1945 in Germany. It's important that it's done today, and I think we saw examples of young people who are putting a voice to the issues that they see within their community. I was taken aback by the notion that the first thing that they said they would do, for the most part, if they had $1 trillion, was after-school care programs. I think that totally reflects the world in which they live. You know, education. And that's the role, I think, of the filmmaker. Is to take what's important to them and begin to highlight it to the rest of the world. Give voice to those that don't have one. So whether our device is a cell phone, or our iPads, or a high-speed HD camera that can actually stream video out there, whether the outlet that we use is a YouTube channel, or Snapchat, or a Vine, or we get the opportunity to show our films in film festivals, or on the CNN News Network. Today we need strong, critically thinking media producers who are willing to stand on the front lines of their neighborhoods and shed light on stories that are continually overlooked. We need to have cameras rolling at all times to document the need for social change. Whether it is access to health care, equal opportunity in the workplace, environmental or political concerns, or shedding light on police brutality, as in the case of Eric Gardner or Tamir Rice, the socially conscious film producer must accept the responsibility to tell stories that the mainstream media is not willing to cover. I spent a lot of time in Latin America, and in particular in Guatemala. And the film industry down there is so small that the country only produces a handful of films each year. Because of this situation, careful thought and precious resources are put into these productions. Rarely are trivial rom-coms or silly action adventures ever produced, let alone even make it past the script process. The stories told down there have significant social relevance to the pressing issues of the Guatemalan people. These films created must have some sort of depth and weight for the stories to be told. In the United States, we are fortunate to be able to tell many stories, both trivial and socially responsible. However, with the glut of American films, it becomes more difficult for stories about social justice to rise to the top. In today's media environment, our culture needs filmmakers like all the ones that were presented here today, more than ever, to carry cameras into spaces and to give voice to a population that is underrepresented. What are the steps necessary to make this change happen? Well, I think today is a start. Today is a good start. We got some cameras into young people's hands. We said, tell your story. Recognizing the work that each of these filmmakers put into their work. Not just the pieces and the stories they told, but the larger issues at hand. Engage them in the dialogue that they presented today. Don't just stop with like, hey, we made a film. Act upon that. That's the key to films about issues around social change. This is the lighting of the fuse. The rest of it is the work that comes from this. Right? Teachers and parents. Oh, wait, let me back up. Well, no, this is good. Teachers and parents. Encourage them to go further. Make more films. Tell greater stories and push them as artists. Nurture them as filmmakers and storytellers. give them more opportunities like we've seen today, financially, essential, as well as creatively to promote the films that bring about social change. To the community leaders, provide the physical space and financial involvement. I come back to that again and again. Filmmaking, video making is an expensive endeavor. Investments have to be made. This is the way we tell stories now. All of us. And that financial investment needs to be made. So I beg of community leaders to do that. No great society flourishes without an investment in the arts. So that big piece of pie that we just saw there, with that huge military budget, I want to see a slice of that put off for the arts. So, imagine a world where we provided for each other, where we wouldn't need $1 trillion for health and social services. It would just be a part of our DNA to do this for one another. Where we wouldn't need to plead for equal access to higher education or the eradication of poverty. There would be no such thing as this digital divide that I opened up with. As part of our mission statement at Avila University, we take responsibility for taking care of our dear neighbor. Imagine a world where this responsibility was a reality that each of us conducted. Until that day, each of us as filmmakers must continue to shine a light on social injustice, both locally and globally. Give those who are marginalized and underrepresented in society a platform. Film and digital media is a tremendously effective tool to do this work and to influence others. I myself have been making films for over 15 years. My films have tackled the issues of drug addiction, race, gender, and social class. I am fortunate to continue to still tell stories about issues of social justice and discrimination. But I only have one camera and limited ability to share my story with others. I need you guys. I need you to pick up your cameras, show me your world, tell me your stories. On every street corner there's a story, an important story about someone's life that really matters. I need you to go out there and do the work to give voice to those people who do not have one. Let them be heard. In closing, I would like to thank you all for coming out here today. I look forward to seeing the work of these young people into the future. I have my business card here. I invite anyone to take one. Call me, email me, share your stories with me. Also, up on the table out front, every year at Avila University, we hold a high school film festival. And we also have prizes in which we provide the winners with cameras that are yours. You get to take them home. So I invite you to enter. There's no entry fee. You just send out your work, and we will screen it in April. I think the deadline is mid-March for that. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you for letting me take a few minutes of your time, and have a good day.
Do you guys have any questions for Nicole? No, you're fine. At all about her experience?
Yeah.
What made you start wanting to make film?
Well, I started as a painter. I actually did large canvases, not quite this large, but huge canvases, and I wanted to see my paintings move. And so it was kind of from an artistic endeavor that I began this process. And it was fairly solitary, much like my painting was. But then I went to college, and I had an opportunity to meet other people, and I saw kind of the responsibility I had as an artist. It wasn't just to do my paintings and put them up on walls and walk away from it, but was to hopefully give voices to people who necessarily didn't have them. And so I began to take that responsibility a lot more serious. And then when I traveled the world, it was like, I cannot not tell the story of these people that experienced 36 years of civil war and are living in a plantation system, much like the slaves back in the 1800s did here, where they're working for a master, but instead of the master picking cotton, they're picking coffee that eventually ends up at a Starbucks right around the corner from us. Just kind of had to take that on a little bit. But it really started as kind of a selfish, like, I just want to create my art thing, and it sort of transformed into less stories about me, because I don't know if I'm really that interesting, more stories about people out there. And that's what I try and get my students to do. I think it's important to find yourself as an artist, find your voice. And oftentimes we do that through our own self. But then going out there and telling other people's stories, and working with others within the community. I like that for the most part in the videos we saw today. They were telling other people's stories that in some ways was their own. But they weren't the vehicles. Good question. Yeah.
There's a couple of popular movies out that kind of run the spectrum of the American experience. I haven't seen either of them, but one is called American Sniper, and the other one is called Selma, which for a large part is about Martin Luther King, who ironically was killed by an American sniper. And so I don't know if you've seen either of those, and maybe you could speak to their relative popularity and what do you think about that?
Yeah, I have seen them both. As a matter of fact, I was in Washington, D.C. last week and got a chance to see Selma. I saw American Sniper the first night it came out because of all the hype, and I was interested to see, like, wow, I came away, I was a little taken aback by it. My own personal opinion on it felt very militaristic and biased. I didn't find many of the I didn't find any Muslim characters that were considered to be good people. They were all considered to be savages.
Yeah.
So I had huge problems with that film. Kind of have a problem with glorification of war, and it felt like there was a bit of that. Selma was an amazing movie. I wish the numbers for Selma were as large as they were for American Sniper, and I think that Selma is a film that, could be part of a school curriculum. I thought it was wonderful. And I'm interested by the fact that in many ways American Sniper is held up as this film that's award-winning and 7, 8 Oscar nominations, and Selma has like 1 or 2, one of them being for the song, but that an African-American woman director isn't even recognized for having the best picture. That doesn't make any, that connection makes no, well, it makes sense to me because I understand that power structure that's taking place in Hollywood right now, but it makes no sense to me as a filmmaker. I work outside of that system, that area. It doesn't surprise me at all. They're both two different ends of the spectrum. However, it does one of the things that I do see as a similarity is violence in America that runs through it. We are a violent society and choose that method quite a bit to solve our issues. So, let's.
Do you have a website where people can see films you've done? On your business card or?
Yeah, I've got my personal business cards. I've got my Avila card just for that, but I've got both here. My work, I'm in the process of putting up my older work. If you email me, you'll see links to both my website and a couple of small excerpts on Vimeo. But I mean, it was one of these things that like 10 years ago, I have pieces that are 10 years old that aren't going to go to festivals anymore that I'm going to start putting up there. Yeah, but see me after the meeting, I'll definitely get you that. Awesome.
Yeah. So you spoke a little bit about, as you traveled the world, as you were exposed to people in poverty and the stark contrast between how we live our lives, here kind of spoiled by, you know, ubiquitous Wi-Fi. But was there one specific life event, or like was it during your travels that you transitioned from being an artist, you know, for art's sake, to using art as a medium for speaking about issues of social change and bringing that to a higher consciousness, and, you know, people in America who just who have the option of ignoring those things?
I think there was one film I was working on. It was a film I was doing back in graduate school. It was called Divided into One, and I wasn't traveling the world. I was actually in San Francisco, California. And I was doing a documentary about street prostitutes, heroin-addicted street prostitutes. And I realized that these women were not, they were invisible to the society, except for a certain segment at a certain point of the day for certain means. But for the most part, no one paid any attention to them, and I thought, wow, we have just abandoned as a culture these people. I mean, we don't even acknowledge their existence at all. And there was no service. There were services, but it kept the cycle of addiction going and prostitution. And so that was kind of the first film, and that gradually took place. You know, I kind of was looking at it selfishly a little more. I thought it was going to be a grander film than it was, but it was still, I began to have compassion for these women in the film, and that sort of was like the real turning point, was that first film in that community. And I didn't even have to leave the country. And then when I started leaving the country, in October I got back from Cuba. I'm taking students down there, traveling with them next year, and beginning to work on a project. I don't know what it is at this point. I'm still working on a feature-length documentary right now that's sort of 5 years in the process. I'm editing it now. I can tell you more about that later after we're done here. But I really became aware of how silly this blockade was that we had up over this small island country that was 90 miles away, that had no power really in the global stage. And I thought, well, you know, we're not even doing any business with Cuba, but yet we are clearly trading with China, another country that's communist, but they have something to give us, cheap TVs or cheap tables, whatever it might be. But Cuba, all they have really is coffee and sugar. Well, we can get that elsewhere. So we'll just keep them here. You know? So it's constantly evolving and taking place.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.